Today, even though I've done 10 years of stroke rehab research, we did 15 years of early intervention prevention publications, we started one of the first charter schools for dyslexia in the nation, lots of stuff that's based on data and science. Today's talk really is about the person, about the level of how dyslexia can impact the person. Most people who get involved in this field in education, they're not doing it for the money, they're doing it because they care about what's going to happen to the person. So I have a pleasure to be here with Ameer Baraka. For those of you who don't know, it's a real treat to have Ameer here, hear his personal story. And it's a story of challenge, it's a story of struggle, it's a story of negative outcomes, but it's also a story of positive effects down the road. And that's really what our focus is on together, is the positive effects down the road. Let's talk just briefly about the neuropsychological aspects of this. I'll be very frank and say that some of the common stuff that you hear in the media and some of the common stuff that you hear from the nonprofits and from some of the for-profit groups about dyslexia is not grounded in solid neuropsychological science. Everybody with dyslexia does not have a superpower. Everybody with dyslexia does not have better visual memory skills. And the adults who I know in my decades of work tell me, okay, I used to feel discriminated as I wasn't part of the general population because I couldn't read. Now I feel like I'm not even part of the dyslexics because they all have superpowers and I don't. So we have to be really careful about how we characterize this stuff and how we jump on the bandwagon of some of these phrases, because if they're not science-based, we actually may be doing more harm than good. And I totally get the desire to say we want to have a positive effect. I'd rather see the positive effect be that we change weaker skills into strengths. I'd rather see the positive effect is that we've taken abilities that were poorly developing and made them into strengths and built abilities for kids with dyslexia, because we have the research, we have the data, we have the know-how of how to do this, but it's not getting into the public sector as well and as high proficiency as it should. So we know that dyslexia is a language-based learning disability. We know the early warning signs are in the spoken language skills. If you have a parent that comes to you and says, I want to be specifically clear, there's this underlining thing I don't like, and I'm really frustrated with this school. Okay? They just give you a whole bunch of clues about the kid you're getting in the classroom. Okay? Because we know that when you make speech errors, odds are you have weaker phonological processing. Okay? Interesting story is how I met Ameer, is because you're going to hear that Ameer gave a presentation to the U.S. Senate Dyslexia Caucus. Afterwards, Ameer gave a talk on national TV. He's interviewed by a reporter. And Ameer knows this person really well. He knows this physician quite well, knows her name. But in that interview, I heard Ameer say her name several times. It was Dr. Shorwitz, Dr. Shekowitz, Dr. Shavitz. But he actually never once said Dr. Shawitz. And he wasn't aware that he was changing her name because his phonological processing system was weaker. I took that opportunity to tweet Ameer and said, Ameer, give me a phone call. I'm a neuropsychologist with a few decades of experience. I know that you probably don't spell very well, and I know that you probably don't sound out words. Even though you've memorized words, your literacy is not fully developed. Give me 15 minutes. Sounds crazy, I know, but let's talk this through. Ameer was brave enough to take that chance. He called me, and we talked, and he did think I was crazy, but we set out a plan of action on how we're going to go about changing his phonological processing, changing his decoding skills, changing his spelling skills. And we did it. And so what Ameer is here to talk about today too is the effects of how that change in skills also affects your self-perception, also affects your self-esteem. You knew you were smart before, but now you really know you're smart because you're not struggling with reading, spelling, comprehension. Those skills are much, much stronger. So we look at the language skills. We know there's memory skill difficulties as well. We know there's auditory working memory trouble. They have trouble with phone numbers. People with dyslexia are more likely to have trouble with addresses, trouble with unique names. But memory for what? What's memory for words? Well, what are words made up of? Phonemes. Okay, well, if you don't have phonological awareness, why would we think you're going to have good, strong auditory memory for structures that are made up of phonemes? So Pat Linnebu was one of the first people to design a test to measure phonological working memory. It was called the Linnebu Auditory Conceptualization Test. It was published in 1971 and again in 1973. That test actually measures phonological working memory. CTOP doesn't measure phonological working memory. I know because I was a consultant on designing the original CTOP-1, and it's really looking at phonological memory, but not so much at phonological working memory, where it requires a much higher level manipulation. That manipulation is what you need to have on board to catch your speaking mistakes and self-correct it, catch your reading mistakes and self-correct it, catch your spelling mistakes and self-correct them. There's an aspect of phonological working memory there as well. My clinics that I run, I've got a clinic in the Caribbean, in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. I know it's really not on the beach in Barbados. I'm in a third world country. It sounds like I'm on the beach in Barbados. I'm not. But we're in a place where it's 1.2 million people, and they want dyslexia services in Trinidad and Tobago. I just happen to have been going there for the last 15 years training teachers. And so we now have a clinic there with speech pathology, OT, clinical psychology, remedial, recreational therapy, school psychology, and neuropsychology, all working in the same clinic, changing language skills, memory skills, and sensory motor skills. When these skills become more efficient, we assume that we're going to potentially give a secondary impact on attention. It doesn't treat ADHD, doesn't cure it, but if it's easier to process language, it takes less effort and less energy, so you're more likely going to have more attention, more resources. It's kind of like saying when you learned how to drive a car, think about how much attention that took the first time you drove a car. And today, you can fix your hair, swap the kids in the back, and drive all at the same time. And notice I didn't say talk on the phone or text. Let's not do that. So we know that these skills could actually have an indirect boost of attention. It's not going to treat ADHD, but clinically, if you make these functioning systems more efficient, they should put less drain on attentional systems, which means more efficient cognition, which means you may feel better about yourself, better self-esteem, and you may actually have a little bit better executive function. Those are things that people are studying. You've had a lot of great science talks today. This is a talk that's more about a personal testimony about a person, and that person is Ameer. So my work with this in the public sector, in terms of public schools, started with my opening of this school in 1999. This is the nation's first charter school for dyslexia. It only accepts kids with dyslexia. We've been running for almost 20 years. And in that school, we're able to provide kids with evidence-based interventions in small group instruction, sometimes 4-to-1, at minimum 6-to-1 ratio. And we're able to change those kids' skills, and they're smiling because they're learning to read. Now in 2002, I forgot the name of this group. It was a charter school finance corporation, did a review of all the charter schools that existed in 2002, and they ranked the top 9. The Einstein School was rated as one of the top 9 charter schools, and it was the only charter school for kids with learning disabilities. All the other schools were specialty schools, art schools, science schools, but that one gave us a ranking to say we were doing something that was more impactful, because these are the kind of results that we were showing. We're showing in a public school environment for free. Nobody's paying for this. I have a personal I don't want to say vengeance, I have a personal issue with all the private schools that charge all these expensive tuition for dyslexic kids. It really should be in the public sector. It really should be in the public schools. It really should be in a way that all the kids can get it as much as possible, because these are the gains I'm making with public money. These kids are coming in with standard scores of 65, and we're getting them to the average range. They're coming in standard scores of 85, and we're getting them up into the average range for those skills. And again, 65s and up into the average range. Now, this is not a perfect controlled sample. This is not an empirical study. This is anecdotal data. I want to be very clear about that. We need more evidence-based practice at school level settings as well. We got tons of money going into neuroscience. And I don't knock neuroscience. I started training in fMRI in 1997. My dissertation was an fMRI dissertation. I believe in imaging. It's a very important piece, but it doesn't really impact what we do in treatment. I don't know of a treatment program yet today that actually improved itself because of some fMRI study. It's nice for us to start to tease us apart and figure out other things we should work on, but we need equal amounts of money going into implementation models. How do you actually change teacher training and change impacts in schools that give us a better outcome? In this school, the kids are smiling, they're happy, and the goal is to get them in the school and get them out of the school. My county should love me. Half my school board does, half doesn't. But what I do for the school board is I take their lowest performing kids out of their system. Their state achievement scores automatically go up because I pulled out the low performing kids. And then we get them on grade level, and the goal is to send them back to school on grade level. If I get them in at grade 2, which is my lowest grade level, I have a chance of maybe 1 or 2 years to actually close the gap for a majority of kids. If I don't get them until 3rd or 4th grade, they're going to be there for 3 or 4 years because the gap is so much bigger. So our goal is early intervention and early evidence-based practice. Potential negative outcomes. You know there's a larger percentage of kids in juvenile justice with learning disabilities and dyslexia. We know there's a higher percentage of high school dropouts that have learning disabilities and dyslexia. We know there's increased chance for depression, decreased earning power, less likely to pursue their own passions and interests, more likely to pursue something they think they can do, something they can get by with. And many of them have negative self-esteem, but it's amazing some don't. Some conceptualize that this is just a part of me, it's not all me, and hey, I can't do anything about it. But if we could change these outcomes, what a potentially powerful impact we could have on society today. And to me, that's the real mission. I met with, I get Jules' name right, Jewel McCombs-Tallis. And Jewel, as part of IDA, is really trying to pioneer more work for better teacher education, better certification of educational programs at the college level, so you come out of the university with a much better knowledge base and know-how of what to do. This is where I started by working in the prisons. This is called Atascadero State Mental Hospital. I was about 20-something years old working in Atascadero Mental Hospital because Pat Lindewood had a contract there actually providing educational services in their school. And I'm one of the staff who went to the maximum security hospital, worked with these inmates. These guys were never getting out of prison. In a facility like this, you've been deemed an endanger to society or an endanger to yourself, and you're not getting out. Rarely do you ever leave. But yet we're still required to educate them. We're still required to teach them to read. And many of them, one time, one of the guys told Pat Lindewood, he said, you know, if somebody would have taught me how to read like this when I was younger, I bet I wouldn't have done PCP like I did so much of it. I probably wouldn't have hacked that guy with the axe, and I probably wouldn't be here today. And I can't help but say, you're probably right. That's probably very true. So from that perspective, we know that if we get into the prisons and give these folks a better chance, we may decrease recidivism. We may decrease the chance they're going to head back into prison. And Ameer's going to talk to you about what he's done. He's also spoken at the U.S. Senate caucus on dyslexia. And he didn't just get up and give a talk at that hearing. He got up and he read his paper to them, because he was so proud that he could actually read, because for most of his life he had about a third grade reading level. So understanding that's where the skills are, let me let you talk, him talk about himself in this video, and then he's going to come up and tell you a little bit more about some key points he wants to share with his audience. We're going to try to end with about 10 minutes on the back end, because we really want to have conversations with you guys. This is really about a discussionary topic of how do we have a bigger impact at a functional level in the public sector, whether it's prison, whether it's schools, whether it's high schools, whether it's college. We need to figure out how to get this great science that people have built into the public sector.
I'm a dyslexia person, meaning that when I was coming up, I had trouble reading. But when I got to prison, I said to myself, man, I'm educating myself. I call myself, gentlemen, the prison coach. Some people say, man, that's pretty presumptuous, that's arrogant. Why do you call yourself the prison coach? Well, what makes you a coach? First and foremost, I did time in the joint. I was able to become successful in the joint and become successful outside of the joint. So everybody needs a coach. Kobe needs a coach, LeBron needs a coach, Tiger needs a coach. So just because I call myself a coach, I still abase myself and say, I'm just a coach, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you, to instruct you to get to the next level. I think one of the most important things, as you guys just got into reentry, I think it's very, very important, man, is negative social interaction. That's the leading cause why people either offend or re-offend. You go back out there and you hang around the same people. But where does that start? It doesn't start once you get out there. It starts in here. Building new pathways can be very difficult sometimes. Imagine if you keep going down a path, right? A path because people constantly walking in that same direction. But if you have to start all over, creating a new path, it's going to be difficult to identify constantly until you keep doing it over and over and over and over again. So when you find yourself going against your values, where are you? You're in distortion. These pro-social values that you got to have, love, faith, peace, forgiveness, mercy, kindness, those things, those are pro-social values. You must become a disciple of those values and never allow a condition to change your values. When you leave out of this prison, all the things that I've said to you, it's going to be challenged. There's going to be some condition out there that's going to challenge your values. You're in control. You're in control. You're in control. You are. You are. You are. You are. And greatness is in you, man.
Thank you guys so much for coming. I do appreciate that. You guys coming out and supporting me. But when I look at that video, I recall vividly what I was feeling at that time. I saw myself again. Every time I go back to prison, I see myself. I see myself there through other people. There's this nexus that we have, being like-minded. So it hits me sometimes, so forgive me. So my name is Ameer Baraka. Hey, how you doing, my brother? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Would you stand up? There's a guy around me. All right. So I grew up in the Calio housing projects and had 2 other siblings, and I went undiagnosed. My mother, who was a young mother, and she called me those names. Stupid, dumb, why can't you be like your brothers and sisters? Why are you acting out in school? So by the 3rd grade, I started cutting school, sleeping in the project hallways in New Orleans. And I knew around the 3rd grade that the conventional way of doing things was not for me. I knew it very early on. And so I was figuring out ways in my entire life, my young life, was how do I make money? So I would sell watermelons, I would cut grass, I would wipe people's cars down. I would do all kind of creative things to make money because just innately I knew that I was not going to get it through the school system because I was failing miserably. I never passed the school spelling test. I cheated one time, I got caught, so that wasn't gonna work, right? So I became rather enthralled with what I saw, what I immediately saw in my community. And what that was, it was dope. It was drugs. It was men selling drugs, acquiring a lot of money. And every kid want to make it out of the hood. Some kids play sports, some kids get academically sharp, and they get themselves out of that. Well, my way was this. I gotta sell dope because I'm just not smart enough. And my mother said that I was stupid and dumb. And that was the queen of my life. So apparently, I must be stupid and dumb. So it's amazing because when she began to say those names to me, I began to act that way as well. So it's very important that we stay away from that when we're talking to kids. My dad was a heroin addict. I met my dad when I was 19 years old. I eventually got hooked on cocaine at 14 years old, starting cocaine. I just was spiraling out of control. I was completely hopeless. And the day that I made up my mind to get out of school, I was in the 6th grade. There was a beautiful girl. Her name was Tyra Lawson. And Tyra and I grew up in the projects together. Fortunately, she went to another school, elementary school, so we met up in middle school. And we're in English class together, first day of class. And I was called upon to read. And boy, that was the most embarrassing moment in my life. I knew that day that I was going to be a dope dealer. Definitively, I knew that was my route. So the teacher called me up, and the teacher left me up there for about 10 minutes, man, just struggling through every word. And Tara had her head down. Everybody was laughing at me, chuckling and stuff like that. And I just couldn't wait to get out of that class. I couldn't wait to get out. I was sweating so bad. And I just ventured off. I divorced myself from school and I said, I'm going to be a dope dealer. And I just embraced that, got with a guy named Michael Brown. We sold dope, he taught me the dope game, made a whole lot of money selling dope. My dad was a dope dealer, so I wanted to be just like my dad. My brothers and sisters, I wanted to show them that I was better than them because even though academically they were more sharper than me, but I was the one that was making the money. So I had a point to prove. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to get out of my mother's home at a very, very early age, even though she was nurturing, but I wanted to prove to her that what she said was wrong about me. So one thing led to another. Unfortunately, there was an incident that took place where a gentleman was selling drugs into my projects, and I had been brainwashed. That's why I titled my book, The Streets Lied to Me. Because in the streets, particularly in my community, in these urban settings, they tell you what it is to be a man. And I thought picking up a gun was being a man. I thought using dope was being a man. I thought if your girlfriend disrespects you, you smack her down, because that's what I saw. I saw men in my community doing that. And so I emulated that. And unfortunately, another young man, he had a weapon, I had a weapon, and some bad things took place. So I went on to prison for the first time in my life, a juvenile. I got a year for that charge, and I still could not read. Even though the time that I spent in that jail, I had physically built my body up as a teenager in prison, and I was always athletic, but I was feared going into the classroom. My brother, he and Deion Sanders were the best 2 cornerbacks in the nation. We were just athletic. We were built that way. We were very talented and gifted kids. But it kept me from the classroom. My reading ability kept me from the classroom. So I got out and got back into selling drugs because, again, I can't read. I can't read. So this time I'm facing 60 years because I got busted with a lot of drugs, get to prison. And sort of some lights come on, right? I'm like, wow, I'm seeing all these guys getting a lot of time in the prison system. And I'm like, I don't want this. I want something different for myself. But the challenge is I still can't read, right? So I get to the penitentiary after being sentenced to a 4-year prison sentence. Luckily, by the grace of God, I was facing 60 years and I was guilty. I had those drugs. The officers were not lying on me. I was a guilty man. I was a guilty man, but God had mercy. A woman who my mother knew, she worked with this woman, and this woman pleaded with the jurors for hours to have mercy. They came back with a lesser sentence. I got 4 years from that. So now I get to the penitentiary. It's 30 of us going there on the bus, and you have to be screened, you have to be tested when you go in. And lo and behold, I'm reading like on the 3rd grade, rather on the 3rd grade level, they say, and I'm 23 years old at this particular time. Due to the fact I'm expediting this conversation because I don't have that much time, but because there were some other things that took place. But I'm getting to the meat of the meat of the bone, right? I'm in school and I want to learn. I really want to learn to read. I really want to face this monster in my life that has been keeping me back. I really want to challenge what my mother said and what my sister has said. I really want this, but I don't know how. So I pick up books and I just try to memorize words. And so there was a great teacher there. He pulled me to the side and he knew that I was struggling reading. He said, listen, Ameer, if you want some help, you got to sit in front of the class and not clown around. Every day I sat in front of the class for the first time in my life because I really wanted to read. And so he pulled me to the side and he said, listen, how is your brothers and sisters? Do they read really well? I'm like, yeah, they read really well. They went on to college, they're smart kids. My brother, he didn't even have to study. This dude was just like, this dude was bad, right? My sister was the same way. And their children are the same way. Their children are really, really smart. UCLA, Texas A&M, they graduate. These are very smart kids. So he pulled me to the side one day and there was a lady came in and she said, Ameer, listen, I want to have you screened and tested. She said tested. She said, I want to have you tested for dyslexia. That was the first time I ever heard that word. And when I heard that word, I instantly went back to my mother because I thought it dealt with something being done. That's just innately, that's because I had been beat down so badly. I just thought that, wow, what my mother said is true because they're looking at my paperwork. They know that I can't spell. They know that I can't read. And so I must be done. And so this guy, the teacher, was a very cool cat and a heavy-set guy. I never forget him, a big guy. And he said, Ameer, you have a learning disability, right? You have dyslexia. And so it was like the lights went on. It was like, wow, okay, I have a problem, like a person has a problem with being handicapped. It's not my fault, right? It wasn't that I was lazy. It wasn't that I was stupid. It was just the fact that something wasn't working. And I didn't know everything about dyslexia. I just needed to know that. That's all I needed to know, that it wasn't my fault. And so I accumulated this insatiable appetite to read. Many of the men that were there, who I came in with, they were all reading poorly. So I didn't really feel bad about myself because I'm like, okay, shit. I'm like, okay, you can't read, you can't read. Okay, I feel good about myself. But now I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm going to learn to read. So, they didn't help me in that area. So what I did was, for 4 years, it took me 4 years to attain my GED, I wrote down thousands of words. And as my reading went up to 5th grade level, 6th grade level, things like that, this confidence came. I had this swell of confidence, and I felt good. And I told my mother that I was reading. She was really proud of me as well. And so I just wrote everything. I wrote every word down, and I wanted to be somebody. I saw myself being somebody once I started to learn to read. I'm telling you, I actually saw this. What I'm doing right now, I saw this. I envisioned this. I saw it. I saw me speaking to crowds of people, telling my story. I saw this. So I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I'm not a science. I'm not an educated man. I'm just a man that just have a vision and that if I see something, I am going to go get it. And I'm going to use people to help me along the way, like my manager, Leland Hardy. He speaks 7 languages. He graduated from business school of Wharton. He's a brilliant man. So I pay him to help me what I don't know. So it's just what it is, right? So I get out of prison, I attain my GED, I get out of prison, and I do well. I get into the film business. And the lights came on. And now I'm just passionate about helping those who are incarcerated now, some of those youth that are doing the same thing. In New Orleans, I went into the youth study center, the youth study center there, and they're trying to help kids who are dyslexic in prison. I'm talking about, it's probably 97% of these kids that cannot read. These are my people. These are my people, and they can't read, and that's just the problem. That's all it is, right? Giving you the tools, man. If once you read, I don't care where you are, your confidence swells. Poverty has nothing to do with it, because my brothers and sisters were both in that same poverty, in those smelly hallways, and we saw broken bottles, and we saw people shooting heroin. But they went to school because they enjoyed school. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy school at all. I never enjoyed school. I don't recall being excited about going to school. And so these same kids that are that are incarcerated, they feel the same way. And the adults are feeling the same way. That's why I created the Dyslexia Awareness Foundation. And that's what we're doing. We're taking these kids, bringing them into my center, and getting these kids with the best practices, along with Dr. Conway's information, and doing what we can to curtail this inability to read. If you catch a kid growing up in Wyoming, right? Say if you catch a kid that's in Wyoming, that kid is more likely to go into farm work. He's more likely to be interested in the cattle, etc. But if you catch a kid in the ghetto, right? He's going to go because he's going to go what he knows. We're creatures of habit, right? We feel comfortable where we are, so he's not going to stretch out, right? I think reading does that. So I'm very adamant about that. I mean, when I met this gentleman right here, I just knew. Listen, I didn't know the A sound. I didn't know 2 E's said E. I didn't know that. As a grown man, I've written a book, The Life I Chose, The Streets Lied to Me, and I didn't tell anybody that I was dyslexic because I was embarrassed. I mean, my last girlfriend was she was a physicist, right? I didn't want her to know that I was dyslexic. You know, I dated an orthodontist. I didn't want her to know that I had a reading problem. I mean, as a grown man, I lived with that shame. But as I begin to speak out, I've liberated myself from that. So imagine how a kid feels. So it's very important as parents. You guys are parents here, that you nurture your children. You speak life into your boys, into your girls. So important. So I stand here today before you as a living witness that this thing is real. And when you look on television and you see 60 Minutes and you see Good Morning America, you see CNN, and they interview kids who are dyslexic, right? And you see Caucasian people, right? And you see them, one I saw out by a yacht. She was standing on the yacht with her son, and I said, oh my God, you're going to be perfectly fine. Your son's well. But on the flip side of that coin, there's a dark side of dyslexia. And the prison systems are being filled with black boys who cannot read. So that's the side. That's the movie. I have a movie. I got the script to it. We're trying to get it produced, trying to get $3 million to get it produced, called Undiagnosed. A very powerful film about my life. It's the dark side of it. It's a really, really dark side of it. So, Dr. Conway, if we want to go to those, is that done? Okay, the importance of early screening. I think that if I had been screened, not only screened, but had the correct intervention early on, particularly from Dr. Conway, when I took his program, right, for 15 months. I dedicated myself for 15 months, 1 hour a day. I don't care. Sometimes I was working on film projects. I'm like, okay, Dr. Conway, I can't do it today, man. Listen, first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock, and he adjusted his schedule. And my tutor, I had a tutor named Stephen, a wonderful man, who really encouraged me. And I mean, there were very small things that I didn't know, and he didn't make me feel bad, And I'm like, oh, he's just a good guy. But I think a good teacher does that to a kid. A good teacher makes you feel so good about yourself. And that man made me feel good about myself. You know, another man that made me really feel good about myself because I didn't know any of my sounds. So it's very important that we screen kids. I think it should be across the board where we're screening every kid, particularly those kids who are showing those signs, those kids who don't know their sounds by 6 years old. I have a niece who just did a dyslexia walk, so she's 3 years old. She's 3 years old. My nephew believes in education, him and his wife, right? He and his wife. So I had her on my shoulder, and you guys can see this on my YouTube page or on my website. I have her on my shoulder. Well, you can't see this, but I have her on my shoulder, and we're walking right through the projects because we're making people aware in those urban areas, in the ghetto, right? I'm making my people aware of it because they need it. And so that crowds of people following us. And I hear her say this. She said, Uncle Millie, they call me Millie. She said, Uncle Millie, that sign said no trucks. I stopped the crowd. I stopped the crowd and said, my niece can read at 3. No trucks. She knew that. She knew that. Now, I probably didn't know that. I was probably been 8 years old, 9 years old to know that there was no trucks. You know, because trucks was something that probably, you know, I can memorize in school if I saw it, right? But she knew that at 3. So she won't have that problem. Her pathway is going to be wonderful. Her dad makes good money, the mom makes good money. She's going to be fine. But I'm concerned about so many other kids in those projects where I grew up at. So early screening is crucial. Minorities need representation and support. This is crucial. As we look around, I see my Caucasian brothers and sisters here, and I am grateful for you guys. However, you have so much power. You have so much power. And I say that sincerely. You have so much, you can get things done. Use that. Use that. I decode dyslexic, bunch of angry moms, they call them. A bunch of angry moms, right? And they're angry white moms. Angry white moms. Well, one black, oh, that's God, she's another, right? But these moms are very, very powerful, right? And I see like Miss Robbie. Miss Robbie goes up to Washington, and she gets things done. And so, but I want to because see, dyslexia has no color. It's bipartisan, man. It has no color. So that's the beauty. I think we can change the world. So as we get more people of color involved, right? We can do some amazing things, man. We can do some amazing things. So, but that's part of my mission as well. So what I do is I get people from out of the projects, bring them to my center, and we have this dialogue about dyslexia, what is dyslexia, the science, etc. So that's what I do. I just travel doing that, right? So that's what I do. But there's things that you can do as well. Maybe talk to people on your job. You know what I'm saying? Bring it up on the job. Try to get them assimilated as well. Dyslexia in prison needs treatment before exiting. I say to myself, you know, Senator Bill Cassidy and I are great friends, and he's working on, I'm on the back end, but he's working on some prison reform stuff. And I said, Senator Bill Cassidy, and he knows this. I said, there cannot be prison reform without education reform. It has to coexist. Because what you have is you have men coming out of prison after doing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and still can't read. They can't read. So the self-esteem problem is still there. And what do we do? We're creatures of habit, right? We go to what we're familiar with. Breaking in people's cars, stealing, selling dope, right? Because you have not given that person the skills, right? To feel good about his or herself and say, okay, I can fill out an application. I can read. See, a lot of people who can read, you take that for granted. Let me tell you something. Reading is very, very, that's something that saved my life. It saved my life. If I could not read, I would be selling dope again. I'd be in a penitentiary for the rest of my life. But reading saved my life. Some people take that for granted because you've been gifted with it. Like we walk, people just, you're not crippled, so you take that for granted. You're not thankful for that. Be thankful that you can read. Never too late to improve. That's a big thing, I tell guys all the time, particularly in prison systems, that it's never too late to improve. It's never too late, but the thing is, we need the skills to improve. We need the evidence-based instructions inside of the prison system to improve. So you have people, there's a guy right now, is a young guy, he's a cop, and we're training this guy. He's going to be doing some stuff with Dr. Conway. He wants to be a police officer, white kid, really good kid, very, very articulate, but he's dyslexic, right? And so they said, listen, Ameer, we want to turn this guy over to you. Let's see what you can do with him, because we're going to give him another shot at passing. He passed everything but the writing exam. He cannot spell, Dr. Conway. He can't spell, he's a poor speller, right? And so Dr. Conway is going to be helping this guy, and I want to see this kid become a police officer. He wants to become a police officer. So it's never too late. It's never too late. I tell that to people all the time. It's never too late. I have people come up to me after a lot of speaking engagements, and they tell me, man, I can't read either. I'm like, wow, man, you're 6 years old. Wow. You know, people have been hiding that long. You're 60 and you can't read. So people have been hiding that long. They're great hiders. You know what I mean? Wow, they're good at that. Like, when you talk about dyslexic thinking outside of the box, they definitely think outside of the box. They know how to avoid you. They know how to keep you from spelling, keep them from writing. They know how to do that. Superpower. Wow, that's something. That's something that's it's a very touchy situation right there when you say superpower. Personally, what I know for myself was that because I could not do things the conventional way, and I knew that early on, I began to think differently. I began to think, how can I get rich, right? How can I make a lot of money? Because that's what we're all thinking about. How can I make a lot of money, right? And so I did all types of little things outside of the criminal element, besides that, to make money. So do dyslexics have superpower? I think that's something we should all cogitate on and really try to think about that. Do I have superpower? I know I have an ability, a confidence. I have a confidence that I can get things done. I believe that. I believe that. I don't believe that nothing can stop me. I don't believe that nothing can stop me. If I do an email and something is spelled wrong, he's my manager in the middle and tell Ameer, you spelled that wrong. I don't care. You might care about that, but I don't care. Why should I care? Right? You know what I'm saying? So people who I think different from you want to do everything perfectly and correct. I don't want to do that because I can't do that. I'm not competent enough to do that. But I am competent enough to go after what I want. But I also have seen so many other guys that were dyslexic in prison, and they're there for the rest of their lives. So maybe they didn't tap into their superpower. Maybe they didn't tap into, I don't know what it is. These guys are the brains. I don't know. I don't know. But I think also that we, like Dr. Conway said, we ought to be careful because I've met many young kids who are dyslexic, and they're so shy. They're so shy, man, and withdrawn. And so like he said, so if they're saying they're superpower and they feel like there isn't any superpower, they can really get caught up into that. So I don't know. I really don't know about that. But that's something I think that we need to really look into. So that's all I had, those 5 points. But again, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to beseech you to continue in your good work. This is a good work. It's not a fight. Let's stop looking at it as a fight. Let's look at it as a journey, and find joy in the journey, because I am completely fulfilled in life. I am so rich. I am so happy in life. I am truly blessed. I am stress-free. I have no worries. That's just my mindset. That's just the way that I think. So hope you guys think the same way. Thank you so much. And again, my foundation is the Dyslexia Awareness Foundation, and you can get it at dyslexiaawarenessfoundation.org and see some of the work that we're doing. And also, we would love your support. Thank you so much.
Clearly, Ameer's got a powerful self-testimony. One thing Ameer didn't take time to tell you about was how things changed for him over time as he began to learn to read and spell. Ameer, how old were you when you learned how to spell?
I was like 44, 45.
He was 44, 45 years old before he really felt like he actually knew how to sound out words for spelling. At the same time, that's when he actually began to build those decoding skills. How did that make you feel?
Great. You know, it's today, a gentleman in the back, what's your name, sir? Mr. Q, he told me a lady's name. Her name was Julie Washington. And I immediately asked him for the pen, and I just wrote it down. It feels so good to spell. It's like, it feels good to spell. No, it's not, I don't have to get little write that down. Can you write it down? It feels good to spell. So it's good to decode, too.
Yeah, that was a powerful moment. For me to see Ameer say, hey, give me a pen. He asked me for the pen. Give me your pen. I want to write this down. And I knew that he knew he could do it. There was no hesitation. There was no doubt. That confidence was there. And that just empowers you. That empowers adults to try to do more. And I'm thankful that Ameer is trying to do more to give back to help other kids, because there's far too many kids who are struggling. But one of the questions is we still have lots of adults. You know, there's estimated to be 36 million adults in the U.S. who are functionally illiterate. That's not all just dyslexics. That's people who have immigrated to the U.S., English as a second language. That's a lot of adults. And we've got a lot of data, new research. There's a study that came out of Portland State about, I think I want to say 5 years ago, but don't quote me on that, because my chronological judgment is not my strength. That is not my superpower. But a man did his swan song study. He followed 500 high school dropouts. His name is Stephen Reeder. And what he did was he followed the 500 high school dropouts to see what happened if they got involved in adult basic education. And he tracked them for 5 years. Okay, let me tell you, from a guy who's done long-term studies before, like 5 years, for him to follow 500 high school dropouts for 5 years, and I think they only lost track of about 10 people. My first question was, how did you do that? I mean, that's amazing, because usually in studies like that, you get this attrition, and they take off, and you can't find them. He goes, no. To sign up for the study, we got social security number, fingerprints, mom's name, dad's name, you know, mom and dad's birth date. We got all kinds of data we could use to track them down. And it says one whole division of the study was the detectives. Don't lose track of these people in the study. The finding was, if you spend an average of 100 hours in adult basic education, you had an increase in your annual income. It wasn't a small increase. It was enough of an increase to lift people out of poverty. It was $10,000 more in revenue per year for the adults who took the time to improve their literacy. So adult illiteracy needs to be ended, and we have data that tells us we can do it, but we've got to get the programs into the service where they're at. Here's why I say very blatantly that we know we can change adult literacy, because this man had a stroke. Unfortunately, he was in his 40s. He went in for a healthy procedure, and I don't want you to feel like you shouldn't do this healthy procedure. Go do the healthy procedures. He went in for what's called a carotid endarterectomy. They're going to clean out his carotid artery. There's too many plaques. Unfortunately, somebody made a mistake during the procedure. They injected a coagulant instead of a thinner. And he had a clot immediately. And see the holes on the side of his head? Yes, men have holes in their head, but that hole is not supposed to be there. This hole over here on the side, this space here is supposed to look just like this space here. So this is towards the top of the brain. It's coming down further. Oh, and this is the left side. And what happened afterwards? He couldn't read. He had what we call phonological dyslexia. He had some speech production problems. We call that Barakas aphasia. He had language processing problems that he'd never had before after that healthy procedure. We put him through an experimental intervention where I took the work that we had done with Joe Torgerson and the work we had done with the prevention of dyslexia with Joe and the group there in the Morris Center, and I modified that treatment approach, and I used it for post-stroke rehab. We gave him 150 hours of intervention, and what we saw was decreased activity on the right side after the intervention and increases in his phonological processing and his decoding skills. And in trying to understand, well, how do we change the decoding skills? Well, what we found was increased activity, what we call it paralesionally. Around the borders of the brain injury, there's still healthy brain tissue there. Until the day you die, you can build new connections in the brain tissue. New connections are the actual intelligence of the brain. It's It's not the brain cells that control or contain all of your IQ, it's the connections between them. It's how well they communicate, it's how well they share information. So if we can actually help, and by this study's estimate was, we thought we could actually help about 70% of adults who stroke regain their functional reading skills. Not back to where they were before, but a functional level that some of these folks actually return to work. In aphasia research, that's unheard of. But knowing that we can make those changes gives us the best hope that we can certainly do more for people with dyslexia because they don't have brain damage. They have inefficient processing systems. It affects those phonological skills and other skills. But if we can get them the services, get them the interventions, get methodologies that have been proven to be effective, and stop using the shotgun approach of just randomly trying stuff with people. Here's the medical analogy of how education still works today. How many of you want to go see the physician who has his own chem lab because he knows you best? And when you come into his office, he's going to mix the chemicals you need because he knows you best more than anybody else. And if you happen to die because he gave you the wrong chemicals, well, your body just worked differently. Okay, well, that's the analogy for what we're doing right now in educational literacy. We're letting people randomly try stuff, randomly throw programs at kids. Some of these programs have never been shown to be effective, but we're saying it's okay, you're their teacher, you know them best, you do whatever you think. Well, that was great back 30, 40 years ago when we didn't have the evidence we have today. Today, it's time for that to stop. It's time for us to figure out what methodologies have the best efficacious data, how do we get those into the teacher training programs, how do we get those into the schools, and make sure kids are getting the methodologies that give us the best outcomes. Now, this is a funny thing to end with. It sounds terrible, but he says the stupidity of Elizabeth Fry wasn't dyslexia. This is a funny thing that T.R. Miles wrote about. And I had never seen this before. When I prepared for this talk, I came across it. Believe it or not, prison work for the dyslexics started in 1813. Okay? Elizabeth Fry was in the prisons of London, and she was in there trying to help a bunch of unruly women who were drunken, naked, disruptive. There's all kinds of great things in this quote, trying to improve their literacy back in 1813. Because she knew if we improved their skills, they would have a better future. Now, the reason why T.R. Miles says, you know, the stupidity of Elizabeth Fry is because she wrote down copious notes about this work. They have 500,000 words written from her. And in the majority of them, they're all misspelled. Tons of misspelling. So they think Elizabeth, because she was in a Quaker family, got a lot of extra intervention, a lot of extra literacy help, and she took even what little skills she had, and she went to the prison to put them in prison and try to change those adult skills. So that's the end of our talk. What we really want to do is dialogue with you guys. We really want to talk with you about, okay, where we're at today, what have we done, what can happen more. We want to hear your questions, hear your thoughts, hear your ideas, and we want to see IDA actually help support better teacher training in the university settings. We want to see IDA get involved in evidence-based instruction. Like I said at the beginning, you didn't hear me say this, Jewel McCombs Tullis, thank you. Jewel McCombs Tullis, that's a hard name. She's part of that IDA directive to actually make changes in our teacher training programs. If we get evidence-based practice into the teacher training programs, we have a better chance of getting into the schools, and we have a better chance your administrators got better training too. And so that we're actually going to put programs in place that are going to have better outcomes and long-term outcomes. Ameer, come on up here with me, and we'd love to hear your questions, thoughts, and comments. Yes, please come to the mic because they're recording stuff.
Classroom teacher. I just use my teacher voice. I am a professor at a university in a literacy program, and my question is, when I fly home to Texas tomorrow, but it'll actually be on Monday when I can do this, what should I do? What should I do?
And your classroom is what level?
Well, I do have private practice, dyslexia practice. I teach undergraduates, literacy methods. I teach secondary content area reading. I teach graduate literacy classes, and I also teach a social studies methods class.
And what we want to do is get you the best evidence-based data about what is the causal factors of dyslexia and which programs do have better outcomes and which ones don't, because all programs don't have the same outcomes. But we do have some programs that are very powerful in prevention. And I hate to say it, don't shoot the messenger, but it's not worth yelling at. The prevention programs are more sensory motor based programs that go back to the lower level sensory processing systems of visual, auditory, tactile, kinesthetic that build the early phonological skills and build them up. Now, I have to be careful because I own companies who do this kind of work. And so my goal here is not to get involved in saying like I'm promoting my companies. But I'm certainly happy to answer more questions about what things are out there, what's available.
We have the knowledge,
right.
But I'm asking, how do I get support from my School of Education dean, my university president, when we have an office, and you know what we call the office? Disability Services.
Yeah.
And I tried with our faculty senate to get that name changed.
Right.
So I'm not getting a lot of support. So I'm asking, what should I do? Are you going to come with me Monday to school?
I'll give you a better option. What I'll tell you is get those angry moms called Decoding Dyslexia and get them behind you to help educate that administrative group in the university level about what can happen. Because Decoding Dyslexia is doing a great job of raising awareness and changing laws. They're getting more people assessed, but we still have a very poor outcome of special ed. So what the backlash of what Decoding Dyslexia is doing now is we're getting more kids assessed, we're getting more kids into a system that doesn't work. Barbara Foreman reported, what is our outcome or success rate for IEPs in special ed? What level of kids make so much progress in special ed? And I am not vilifying special ed teachers. Believe me, I'm not, because my mother is a retired special ed teacher. So I'm very careful. What I'm saying is the system that we have, what percentage of kids read on grade level and need special ed? What is it? Barbara Foreman reports it's 5%. Okay? Education is the only industry that you're allowed to have a product that it fails 95% of the time. You're not buying a washing machine that works 5%. You're not buying a car that works 5%. But in education, we're allowed to say that's just the best Johnny could do. His brain works differently. That's not good enough. So the goal is to actually get the better education, get the better methodologies, and help, I would say, I hope the next initiative for Decoding Dyslexia is help change what's happening in the actual training schools. Sorry, there's some of the mic, but if you go to the mic, we'd love to hear your comments. Thank you.
Hi, Ameer. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm very well. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you.
So, Ameer, how much money did the taxpayers spend on you not teaching you to read K to 12 and in prison?
I don't know, but it was a huge number because I caused a lot of damage.
Too much. Yeah. More than they should have, that's for sure.
So I'm going to piggyback just to answer her. In Rhode Island, it's like for juvenile, it's about 200, right around 240,000 to have juvies in there. It's about 15,000 to educate a student, so that'll give you an idea. My question is, I'm more interested in the prison population, and so to get you out and have somebody with education, are we hitting some of the prison, the higher eds, who make the decision about training? Are we hitting them? And I don't know if there's like a union or who you would go to, but you have a huge population of black young men that are coming out who can't fill out applications.
Right.
So how are you handling this with Senator Cassidy, or what are some of the other ways that we can help too? Like, I'll go back to my state.
Right. Yeah, right. Well, actually, in Louisiana, we're talking to the wards, in which they're completely, right now, there's been this shift with prison reform. They need help, they want help. So if you got people that are trained, right, that can go in and that are not afraid to deal with that population, you can get a lot of things done, because they're people that we just screened 100 men and 100 women in a prison in Louisiana. So we haven't came up with the results yet. But I know personally from talking to these people, because I was there when we were doing it, many of them can't read. So, but they want the help, they have the time. I mean, these people got 10 years, 15 years, they're not going anywhere. So you have a job for life. And so, if you go talk to the ward, I'm sure they can get you in if you qualify.
I just have a question specifically regarding that. Like, I have a daughter who's in education and is looking, to do something proactive to help with this. Yeah. When you talk about if you're not afraid, for a 22-year-old, shall I say, white girl to go into this, that was all, like, how is it there when if someone wants to go in and educate and be part of that, is she safe? Do the wardens?
Yeah.
I don't know much about this, so I'm asking.
Right. I think, I would like to see your daughter personally do a preventive measure, right? Catch those kids who are on their way, those kids that are in the community or that are in schools currently. But if that's something she wants to do, Yeah, it's pretty much a contained environment. It's safe. Yeah, it's safe. It's definitely safe, particularly in women prisons. So it's really safe. So.
But you're right. We need an organization that's going to take this on.
Yeah.
I'm doing all I can do.
Yeah.
Sorry. Absolutely. We want to do prevention and we want to do mediation.
Right.
Both are critical elements. Absolutely.
Because these same guys are coming back to your community.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm so enjoying today. Last year there was a woman at the IDA, not last year, sorry, in the Florida IDA conference, and she talked about something called the Dyslexia tutoring program. It directly spoke to a poor, poverty level population, and she really inspired me. And I live in Rockaway Beach, Queens, New York, and Far Rockaway is one of the worst ghettos in New York City. And I did a grant. It was really simple. It was like $2,000 or something, and I applied for this grant because this woman told me she started this tutoring center in Baltimore. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not familiar.
Baltimore, Maryland. So I didn't end up, the center would have been good, but I didn't feel like it was the right fit in terms of me being able to really pull it off. But I just wanted to mention it to people here, like the concept is, and you can look up Dyslexia tutoring program, was all volunteer. And so I'm being a practitioner myself, a dyslexia practitioner, I was willing to put the time in, get the money, use that money to buy materials, and then just train volunteers, and then they do the after-school program. And I was going to connect it with this place called Rise, which does phenomenal work in the community, so that population would really trust and feel safe going there as opposed to a school. So just something to throw out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your work. No doubt about it. Appreciate that.
Hi. So my daughter, who's white and 33 now, has been going into prisons in New Jersey for about 7 years. Yeah, and now she's the director of a program at a university which she was a part of as a volunteer, but it's all higher ed related. So she runs groups of, they're usually graduate students or professors who go into the New Jersey prisons, not all of them, some of them, and then they offer accredited classes, and so people can actually get 2- and 4-year college degrees. And now I work with students with reading challenges at the elementary level in kind of rural New Hampshire. And so I often say to her, what's going on with people who are dyslexic? What's going on with people who can't take the classes that you teach? And so she's not aware of what's going on with that. And I was wondering if there was, and just to answer your question, so she's never had a problem. It's always been a safe situation, well organized. These programs are in, I think, every state, right? Aren't there college classes being offered in every state? I could be wrong.
No,
I know.
Not in the South.
Not in the South, okay. And I think she said she's gone to conferences in California.
Yeah,
I think
you're probably
extensive in
yeah.
California.
Yeah.
So what I was wondering about is if there are organizations, is it specific to each state, or is there some national organization that works with students that are more dyslexic in the prison population? Because she wasn't aware of it, and I'd love to tap her into it, and I know she'd love to be involved with that too.
Yeah, well, in Louisiana, the reason why I think there's so much reform going on because it's really breaking the state, right? It's breaking we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. So Louisiana does, right? And when it comes to New Orleans, we have the highest incarceration rate. I think it was designed that way to give these draconian prison sentences out and warehouse these men and get money off of them, right? So it's like a hotel business. You want to keep the hotel filled. So that's what's going on now. But now it's hurting the state so much until they have to reduce it. So now what they're doing now is saying, okay, we gotta let men out. They're letting a lot of people out that they're not supposed to be letting out because it's just hurting the state so much. But you gotta be careful of that. But at the same time, it's so much work that needs to be done because I fear men coming home who can't read. I don't see what you're gonna do if you can't read. So I commend your daughter for that.
Let me just say 5:30. We're technically supposed to stop. Ameer and I are happy to stay and answer questions, but I don't want people to feel like they're held hostage. So if you have an event to get to, feel free to get to it. Thank you for coming. The others, please go ahead and ask your questions. We're happy to answer. No, that's right. Go ahead. Because other people will probably benefit from your question.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I used to teach in Tallahassee, Florida, in the Panhandle, in a Title I school. And one question I have is, I know that there's a big change right now going on with trying to get more men of color as special ed teachers.
Yeah.
What initiatives is the dyslexia community to use so that we can attract more men of color as teachers?
Wow, that's very, very powerful. I think, personally, I don't know. I can't answer that question, but maybe Dr. Conway can. But what I am doing, I am trying to be the face in this space, right? Because I know it's impacting us severely. So I'm trying to be the face. I'm reaching out to a lot of, I'm an actor, right? Who found it? I'm trying to reach out to other actors like Octavia Spencer. She's dyslexic. And she was nominated, but we can't seem to get these people involved. I don't know why, but I have a job to do. So that's a great question because, we have a program in New Orleans. I'm up under this program. It's titled Us Helping Us. And what we're saying is, listen, let's quit begging people, quit asking people to help us. Let's help ourselves. So that's one of the things that we need to be doing. I can't answer your question, but that's a beautiful question.
I think it's a great proposal to send to IDA. I think it's a great proposal to say to IDA, can we get an initiative going to IDA? This is the largest body internationally of people concerned about dyslexia. So any group that's got the best.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I will say yes.
All right.
I'm the board chair.
Okay, so the board chair says yes. We're going to work on taking an initiative to help get more men of color, and I should say of all colors, into special ed. And that could be powerful because you need male role models. That he happened to have an online tutor that was a guy is a rarity because most of the people I employ in that company are women. And that's just how it is. Now, I want to be clear about one thing. When Ameer was doing all his lessons, all his work, it's programs of a company that I own. I don't benefit from that company financially. I am the CEO. I own that Now Programs company. I don't get shareholder distributions. I put all the money from that company back in that company, and I funded all of Ameer's treatment because I knew he would take that and do something big out of it. But he did all his treatment online. So it's a webcam, one-on-one, even small group online. So no matter where he was in the country, he knew his lessons at noon every day, and he dang better be online because I'm paying Steven to be online. So you better get up there and join that session. So there's a lot more we can do with technology resources as well. That same company, we're building apps. My apps are not screening apps. My apps are actually instructional fidelity apps that I can actually give to the teachers who have evidence-based training to help them with fidelity of their instruction in the classroom. That's a huge problem we have. In my own charter school, that's been open for 19 years, we struggle to help maintain the quality of instructional fidelity even within my own school. And I only have 110 kids. But it's a big issue of this piece as well, is we've got the evidence-based programs. Let's get the training there, but then how do you help maintain the support for the teachers to make sure the fidelity is there as strong as possible?
So my question is a little bit different. I teach court-committed juveniles, so I have 15 boys in my classroom.
Thank you.
When I started 17 years ago, they were with me for 12 to 15 months.
Right.
Now, with the way things have been changing, I get them for 2 months to maybe 6 if I'm lucky. And I can't, those who are struggling readers, I can't remediate enough fast enough for them. Are there any words of wisdom you can give me to take back to them? I'm constantly talking to them about the street to prison pipeline and how they need to break that system. But in 2 months, it's hard to make a dent.
That's why the movie Undiagnosed has to come out and has to be done. But one of the things that you could say is, because what happened, what would help me as well, and I had to get the condensed version of my story because for the sake of time, a guy named Nathan McCall wrote a book titled Make Me Wanna Holler. And so when I was when I was able to read that book, it really woke me up. So I think and I said what made me think about it, I'm like, wow, I did more stuff than Nathan, right? In Nathan's solo book, that's why it made me want a solo book. But I think some of the lessons in my book, the story, tell them the story, read the storytelling. Read my storytelling. Go online and look at some of the videos, because the thing is, they need hope, right? They just need hope. right? Because they have lost hope. They've been lied to, so they need hope. And it needs an infusion of hope. And so I think that's one of the things my book gives inmates, an infusion of hope. So please tell them my story. No, get my phone on, I'll call them up and talk to them. Yeah, I do that. People know me. If people know me, I do that.
And as the scientist speaking, besides hope, and in addition to hope, we want you to have the most evidence-based, most effective program possible. And one of the studies that we did with Joe Torgerson's group, the Morris Center, Torgerson, and UF, we all collaborated together. Our kids only got 8 weeks of instruction. Many people don't know it's only 8 weeks of instruction. But they got one-on-one, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and we had to stop after 8 weeks. Not because they were finished, because that's all the budget could afford to pay. Those kids made about 3 or more grade levels gain in phonological processing and decoding skills. We followed them 1 year after treatment stopped and 2 years after treatment stopped. We started talking earlier and we said only 5% of kids leave special ed. In that study, 40% of those kids left special ed within 1 year of 8 weeks of instruction. So don't underestimate what you can do in 8 weeks. Happy to talk to you more about what might be able to be possible. My school can only do small group instruction. That study, it was all one-on-one. Yes, there's a differential impact, but there's more to be happening in that environment, but we've got to get you the programs that give us the best chance to build foundational skills.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do.
Hi guys, I just want to say bloody well done for all the work that you guys do.
Thank you.
I'm from London actually, and I work in an educational facility myself, but I'm dyslexic and I got diagnosed when I was 19, and I struggled through my whole life and even now because the resources are very slim in the UK, and there's a lot of the same kind of programs consistently popping up, and I call like the older generations that have dyslexia like myself, like 25, 30 and upwards, the forgotten members of society.
Yes.
Because like I can't transition in my jobs because I can't write my applications to the standard that the world requires. So it's a major, major problem. And I wanted to just say to the lady who said that her daughter wants to go into like the prison system and stuff, dyslexics are so willing and so ready for help. Like so you understand as well, but I'm just saying anybody who wants to help and has it in their heart, they should help, because if I had the help that I needed when I started, all the side hustles that I had to take to get to where I am, I probably wouldn't even be in education. I'd probably be doing something totally different, but nobody really supported me throughout my stage. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
I just have a question about, as an adult, Ameer, when you started to learn to read and write, was it more empowering for you to begin with writing or reading? Because I would imagine that going back to basics as an adult, I mean, that's a challenge for working with adults. So my